Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Fearless Journeys Thriving in College. I'm Corinne, and I'm joined by my co-host, Steve. And today we're diving into a crucial topic that affects so many college students, mental health stigma.
Yeah, absolutely, Corinne. Mental health is something we all deal with, especially during our college years. So in this episode, we'll be exploring how stigma around mental health can impact students' lives and ways that we can break that silence.
Before we jump into stigma, let's remind ourselves what mental health really means in the context of college life. Mental health encompasses the emotional, psychological, and social well-being of students as they navigate the academic, personal, and social challenges that come with higher education. It involves maintaining a positive mental state, managing stress, seeking support when needed, and fostering resilience to cope with the unique pressures of college. It's essential to acknowledge that it's okay to have struggles.
Yes, balancing academic pressures, social life, and personal growth can be challenging. And these experiences can often take a toll on our mental well-being. Now let's hear from Hannah, a college student, about her personal experiences with mental health challenges during this journey. Hannah, would you like to give us a little bit about yourself, share whatever you'd like?
Yeah, for sure. So this is technically my third-ish year in college. I used to go to college in Medicine Hat for 1 year, and then COVID kind of messed things up a little bit, but especially during that time, during COVID, it was really difficult with online school and everything, and it was not a good situation. Personally, for me, I hated it. I absolutely despised it. Nevertheless, I persisted, and I made it here. I had to drop out last semester in the winter because of my mental health, and it was not good. And so just having those decisions in my life and like, do I stay in school and keep going? And do I possibly get worse? Or do I leave school, get the help I need, get better, a little bit better, a lot better, but get better regardless, and then go back and try again? And that was a really big decision for me. It was really tough. My parents hated it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so just having those struggles, this is the most I've struggled with my mental health in the entire time that I've been formally diagnosed. And it was just a real shock, especially for, am I really considering dropping out of school sort of thing? So yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And being in school, just how much did that really impact your mental health?
Well, it depended on the day. Every day was a different day. Some days I didn't want to leave my room, and some days I wanted to go see every single friend I've ever known. It just depends. But I think by me dropping out and coming back when I'm in school now, it's a lot better than it was before. And I can visibly notice a difference with me, like mentally, physically, emotionally even too. So I think that having that short break in time was really good for me because I got to work at my job and every day, like 9 to 5s. And that the money was good. Everything was great. But I did miss school. It made me realize how much school was important for me, specifically for my mental health, because I get to come here and I get to see my friends. I get to see my teachers. I get to learn new things, and that's what I enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it exciting. Yeah, it's a lot better now that I'm back in school, which is great.
Yeah, no, that sounds really good. And do you think that there was maybe some change? You said work was really helpful. How did you prepare then to come back into school regarding your mental health?
I did a lot of talking with my therapist and my psychiatrists and just different doctors I have. I did a lot of talking with my parents as well. I also did some talking with my boyfriend at the time. I set my expectations because sometimes I have unrealistic expectations, I'm going to get straight A's through all my classes, and that's not always the case. Yeah, I set my expectations right away and knew exactly, this is what I'm aiming for. If anything gets above that, fantastic. if anything gets below that, I got to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having, especially with routine, I'm very much like a strict person for routine, and having that as like just the bar is set there, it was probably the best thing I could have done regarding that, because there were no surprises. I knew exactly what I was going into. I knew exactly what I wanted to achieve. The good thing that came from all that talking.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, good mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you mentioned too, having those connections, that support, which I think is really important, right? Those connections are major when we're talking about mental health, for sure.
absolutely.
Can you speak to the stigma piece? Is there any part of stigma that affected your journey?
Just the whole, like, probably the whole focusing thing. I have a lot of trouble focusing. Mm. And so, well, I have a lot of trouble with my mother. She fully believes that I'm faking it. And, you know, like, this is all just a ruse. And she's taken me to all these doctors for no reason. And part of me still can't believe that, even though this started in, like, junior high school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So she still believes that I'm faking it to some degree. And it's kind of mind-boggling. But just the whole, like, oh, like, you can do it. You can get out of bed in the morning. It's not that big of a deal. I think the whole, like, not believing me thing, like, it's my mother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, it's somebody who taught me how to use a spoon. Like, like, and having her not believe me, just, it sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that disbelief that, like, the mental health, because we can't see it,
Mm-hmm.
it's not real, can really be a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yeah, it sounds very challenging.
Mm-hmm. Just because it's something I can't actually, like, is physically wrong with my body.
Yeah.
Like, if I had a broken leg,
Yeah.
obviously she can see that. She can believe it.
Yeah.
But she doesn't understand me when I say that I have a fractured brain.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
Yeah.
because you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's kind of been weighed down on me. And my dad has been a real, like, rock in that situation, because he understands, he gets it. He works with kids like this all the time. Like, he kind of gets it a bit more than she does.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks, but I live.
Yeah.
It does suck.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any pieces that you want to share that we haven't asked? If not, that's okay.
That's okay either. Yeah. You did great.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for sharing your story, a little bit about your story, and helping other students see that your story and sharing can help other students get through barriers that they might be facing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we do have a question in here. Do you have any insight on supports that you received through the college? So that could be peers, faculty, mental health services.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, actually. Yeah. A lot of my friends and other peers, like students and stuff, they all accept me, which is kind of weird because, you know, having that mental health in high school specifically, like, I was the weird kid. I was the kid who, like, dressed up full out for spirit days, you know, and just it was a little off. I wasn't one of the cool or popular kids or whatever. Like, coming here, I realized that there's like 100 kids like me, and I'm like, oh, so I just have to find my people. So it's kind of like we travel in packs, you know.
Yes.
Very well organized packs.
Yeah.
Having that realization of, like, oh, there's other people that are going through almost exactly what I'm going through right now. They have the same struggles that I do. And knowing that and making friends with those people really helps, because it's like, oh, how can I do this better? Well, I'll ask my friend because they have the same mind like me. So in regards to, like, the school itself, there's a lot of supports that I can get, especially with, like, testing services and accessibility services, which is really good for me because, you know, with trouble focusing and everything, I can get extra time on my tests. I can get a reader for my tests. I can get a sitting and standing desk, which is really nice because I move around a lot. Mm-hmm. So there's that. And then what else? Oh, there's like an isolated space because I have anxiety when it comes to those tests. Having all those supports in place really helps, especially for tests, because tests are very, like, they're worth a lot of your grade normally. And, you know, you really have to focus. You really have to study. There was also once I could get an exercise ball to sit on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I thought that was so cool. And I was like, I really want this again. I haven't had it since. I've only had it once. But it was just kind of there the one day. Having all of those things, like, really helps. And I told my dad about it because he works with elementary kids. He even says, you know, like, we give those kind of things to our little ones, you know, that are, they're called wiggle seats.
Right.
And he's like, we do that for the little ones. And I'm like, oh, okay. I am a child.
Aren't we all at heart?
Yeah,
literally.
yeah.
So, yeah. But, yeah, having that there with accessibility services. And then, like, the Learning Cafe, I use that a lot as well when it comes to needing help with assignments and whatnot. They're very good at what they do. Like, very good. They completely, like, get it. And if they can't help you, they will find somebody who will, which is absolutely fantastic. So, yeah. And then wellness services, you guys. Yeah. So I come and see you guys all the time. So
Which we love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So there's a lot of supports on campus. And the only thing that I would recommend is you have to look for them because I'm going to be a little critical. They're not advertised as much as some people would like.
Right.
Which there could be reasons for that. I don't know. But I've had a lot of students, like, I'm an RA on campus because I live on campus, right? So I've had a lot of students come up to me and say, like, hey, I'm having a lot of trouble with school. Do you know where I can find help? And so I always refer them to wellness services, accessibility, Learning Cafe, you know, like, all of that. And they're like, oh, well, like, where can I find more information about that? So then, you know, I direct them in whichever direction they need to go. But just having that advertised, probably, I don't want to say it'd be better or worse. Like, I don't really know. But just, yeah, I've had a lot of students just come up to me and ask where they can find help. So,
yeah, I think that's really important to know, too. And I think colleges and universities really do need to make sure that students are aware of the supports there. Yeah.
Like, when I first went into my first year in Medicine Hat of college, I had no knowledge of anything to do with those kind of supports. And then I started getting really bad anxiety in tests. And so one of my instructors told me, well, you should go and see, like, this service. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, we'll see. And then as soon as I got registered here, immediately I checked in and looked at the accessibility services and was like, okay, they have it too. Great. So it's kind of getting around, like, word of mouth, really. Like, every friend that I have that's coming here, like, I have a couple friends coming, I think, next semester. If you have these problems, go to these people. So yeah,
That's awesome.
Thank you for sharing. And the advertisement piece is tricky. I definitely think like you're saying, like, sharing with people, the word of mouth piece for students who are listening and don't know where to look, maybe talking to friends or faculty, like their instructors, that could potentially be a first step. So thank you for sharing those points. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So our next piece, we're going to look specifically at the stigma. So mental health stigma is a real barrier, as we've seen, that can prevent many students from reaching out for help. It's about time we shatter those barriers and create more supportive environments.
Yes, exactly. Stigma often stems from a lack of understanding and really perpetuates harmful stereotypes. So let's discuss its impact on students.
And here to help us gain a deeper insight is Colby Young, a mental health support worker and advocate. Welcome, Colby. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I've been working in mental health for the past 6 years. I worked with a lot of students, with a lot of youth. I've worked with people up to the ages of 65 as well. Yeah, I kind of went through my own mental health kind of discovery journey while I worked in mental health, which was really awesome. Realized I had undiagnosed ADHD at 27. Got some help with that. And then with that, I realized, hey, I could probably, go to school and help other people going through similar things that I've been through. And not only that, but people that I've, helped get through some stuff in the past as well. So that's why I'm here today.
That's really exciting, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's really good to, when you're working as an advocate, to have those personal experiences as well, right?
Exactly. And I think everyone does to some degree have those personal experiences. Sometimes it's, it's tricky to get them to realize that, hey, just because you think everything's okay now doesn't, mean that everyone doesn't go through their own mental health struggles, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So Colby, could you elaborate on the impact of cultural and maybe some societal factors on mental health stigma, especially within kind of like that diverse college community that we have in Canada? How can we really address those nuances effectively? Yeah,
so that's really hard because stigma it's so much bigger of a problem, I think, than a lot of people think it is. I mean, you have, internal stigma, what you put on yourself. You have your perceived stigma. Sometimes you can feel stigma that people aren't even putting on you, but you're almost thinking that they're going to put on you.
Right.
And then you have the actual stigma, like, students who don't want to tell their parents they're about to drop out of a class. And then they start spiraling because they're, now they're failing and they can't tell anyone. And then they, and so it's very hard because there's a lot of factors affecting stigma. As far as societal nuances, I think that the only way to fight it is to realize that you yourself are part of society, right? So all those things that you feel like stigma, and Hannah gave a great example of her friends being very supportive. That's part of society. That's what you do. You have to be the example. You have to, let other people know that it's okay and that, you don't think that they need to succeed this much to be, of value and stuff like that. So I think with society in general, it's kind of a thing that we all need to decide that we're going to make an effort to minimize that stigma as much as we can. As for cultural, it's a little harder, right? Because, I'm part of one culture, you're part of another culture. I can't affect your culture, right? As far as that would go, though, I've had a lot of experiences with mental health groups where people from other cultures would come and, share their story. They would say, in my culture, we don't believe in mental health necessarily, or, something along those lines. But by them reaching out, then that way they can educate themselves and they can, work on themselves. And then hopefully that they can pass that along to, their friends or children or whoever, and kind of try to break the cycle of stigma in their culture would probably be the best way to combat it, I think.
Kind of that experience piece of it, right? The more they experience, the more we can change those societal and cultural stigma pieces.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Colby, as a mental health advocate, you work with various demographics. How do the challenges and perceptions of mental health differ between college-age students and other groups you've worked with? And how does this influence your approach to advocacy?
So that one's an interesting question. I don't necessarily like to generalize. I do find that a trend of mental health is becoming more and more like an open thing that people talk about and that people address and people, want to work on. As you get younger in age, that's more of a thing. College age students, especially today, are really, kind of taking initiative in doing that. And not only that, but the services are so much better. Even like when I started working 6 years ago, I was working in a program that helped people with suicidal ideations kind of stabilize and get back on their feet and get back out into society. And a large portion of our clients were students, who weren't sleeping, who were failing a class, who couldn't tell their parents. And over the past 6 years, I've seen the number of students in those programs decline rapidly.
Okay.
It's so that I think that just goes to show that as you do get younger in age, you do, this stuff becomes more and more important to them. And the older you get, unfortunately, the less people tend to believe in it, first of all. And it's really hard because it's almost a lot of things such as ADHD are genetic. Depression, anxiety can all be genetic, right? So for a kid to say, Mom, I can't sit still in class, I can't focus, I can't do my paperwork, I can't do this, I can't do that. And the parent will say, well, no, everyone struggles with that because I struggle with that. And when in reality, they also have it and they struggled their whole life with it, but they just think that's normal.
Right.
So I think as you get older, it's 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 something that isn't quite as talked about. It's kind of like a taboo subject. Like you don't really talk about it, but it is something that can be talked about. My parents are a great example. When I was younger, I didn't honestly hear the word mental health, I don't think, till I was 18 and I got, into the workforce, and people I worked with kind of helped me through some stuff, that I was going through, and started to look at my own mental health and what that meant. And now I can, sit down and have a conversation with my parents, and I can say, like, with the ADHD especially, I can say, this is how my brain works. This is, these are things I struggle with. And then they can say, oh, well, these are things I struggle with. And you can have that conversation with them. But it is harder for some people. I know some parents aren't quite as receptive, depending on culture and, own experiences and stuff like that. And then youth is my favorite. I love working with youth. Like young kids, their brains are just sponges. And sometimes all they need is like that they don't even need you to tell them that mental health is important. They just need someone to show them that it is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So as kids learn from, these little bit older kids who are taking their mental health seriously, they start to think, oh, mental health is serious. And it kind of just has an interesting chain reaction. Whereas, it's just as, time progresses, mental health is just becoming something that's talked about more and more, which is awesome.
And reaching those kids, I should say, children and youth, like you said, I think that's how we boost up our talk about mental health and fight that stigma, because as they grow, then their children will be more comfortable with it. Right?
Well, and like you were saying too, they can support their parents in understanding potentially those newer concepts to people who may not have learned it when they were children.
Yeah, exactly. And like with me, I kind of snuck it on my parents, right? You don't just kind of all of a sudden sit them down and just be like, mental health is real. You got it. It's, you come home and you start saying, how was your guys' day? Like, how did that make you feel? How do you start using these words that like now they have to tell you how they're doing and if they're stressed and then eventually they just get more and more comfortable with it. So it can be tricky, but kids are an open book. How are you feeling today? Well, I'm sad.
Yeah.
And you can really kind of get into that with them, which is awesome.
Yeah, talking to parents, that's a good tip. Colby, could you share some strategies for our listeners here who might be struggling with mental health but are hesitant to seek out supports due to stigma? Yeah,
I mean, really the only strategy that is and I always tell people this because a lot of people will be, they'll talk to a mental health professional, or they'll even talk to a friend, and they'll be like, look, I'm struggling in this and this and this, and like I don't feel like I'm doing enough. And that first step, telling someone, that is the biggest, most important step, because there's so many people who struggle in silence that, they think this isn't going to be an actual problem. No one's going to care. That first step of telling someone is, and whether that's a friend, family member, or a mental health professional, you need to get out there and you need to take that first step. You need to ask for help. You need to tell someone you're struggling, because no one can help you if they don't know that you're struggling. And it's sometimes hard to know your friends are struggling. People mask very well when they're struggling. And I think, yeah, just finding someone you trust, and and it doesn't have to be a deep conversation. It doesn't have to be this huge heart to heart. It can be as simple as, hey, I'm having a really bad, couple weeks, and I just want to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
That brings to mind something that comes from the States. It's called Seize the Awkward. So you're talking about people who are struggling, reaching out. I want to flip that a little bit too. If we have friends or peers that they've changed, something's changed about them. Seize the Awkward is a campaign that's come out of the US, I believe. It's seizetheawkward.org. Check it out. Cool website. But taking those moments, those silences, and saying, hey, I've noticed something's up. You want to talk about it? Because I think that piece too can help us reduce that stigma. If we notice our friends or our family are struggling, letting them know, hey, I've noticed. You can talk to me if you want to. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's super awesome. I would say even take it one step further. Even when you don't think they're struggling, how are you doing? How are things going? And not only that, if you can, like for me, stigma was something that I fought to overcome earlier in my life. And I've gotten to the point now where I really like being a mental health advocate, and I kind of just no secrets, bare it all. If you're the kind of person that can do that, you know, just tell someone. Like someone says, how was your day? You say, you know, it was really crappy. You know, I felt really anxious about this. I had, you know, my self-esteem was low for this reason, because, you know, coming from someone who I had an all-male friend group my whole life, you don't really talk about feelings. You don't talk, right? There's a lot of stigma around that as well. And ever since I've tried to become more of a, I guess, like more of an example of someone, you know, I start doing stuff like that. I start telling my friends how I feel, you know, even with parents, like, you know, I start telling them how I feel, because really being the example, you're normalizing it, right? It's like, it's the same thing when I teach like youth classes. I sometimes you teach a class where you write on the board. Well, I misspell words all the time. And I tell them that from the beginning. Like,
Me too.
Right? It's hard. It's hard to talk and think and write at the same time. And I've had kids come up to me after and say, like, you know, I struggle with spelling too. Like, and that, you know, and when you normalize these things, that's how we fight stigma as well, because the stigma is sometimes based around the fact that it's not normal to not be able to how to spell. It's not normal to get low grades. It's not normal to fumble over your words when you're talking. So if you can be the person who normalizes that and is okay with that, I would say that's a great step to do as well.
Yeah. And like you said before, you know, people who are struggling, sometimes they don't know how to reach out. They don't know the supports, and they feel like they're alone. Same idea, right? So there are people out there who still struggle, who will always struggle. So nobody is really truly alone.
So the next question we have here, can you also provide some tips or strategies for students to initiate and maintain these conversations with friends and peers who might be struggling?
Yeah. I mean, number one strategy is just realize that it doesn't have to be a huge conversation. You know, it doesn't have to be something that's awkward. It's totally normal to struggle with your mental health. To start these conversations, like I said, you can even use the tricky approach like I did. Just, you know, how was your day, man? You know, you look kind of stressed. And then or even if you wanted that reciprocated, you know, a lot of people, if you ask, how was your day? They'll ask you back, and then you can, you know, and then if you feel a little bit of stigma around telling them how your day was, just, you know, tell them parts of it. I'm really stressed today, or, you know, I'm really anxious today. You know, it doesn't have to be I think a lot of people think that when you reach out to your friend, it's going to have to be like a therapy session or a counseling session. And in reality, your friend's not a mental health professional, they're support, you know, so you're going to tell them what's going on, and they're going to say, oh, you know, that's hard. I'm sorry. Like, can I do anything? And then there is a little bit of risk to it. You know, self-disclosing like Hannah did, which is super brave, super awesome. And I think more people need to try to get comfortable doing that, because it is a skill. I think it's something that you need to try, and it does backfire sometimes, but without putting yourself out there, without letting people know that you're struggling, you know, it's hard to do anything about it. It's hard to get help. And
and it can spiral and get worse.
Exactly. Yeah. And so my strategy, I would say, try opening with, you know, something that's not so deep. Try to make it casual. Try to just remember that your friends are there for you. One of the best coping mechanisms and best ways that I tell people to go about anything is pretend that you're your own best friend. Pretend you're someone that you love, because then just think about how you would treat yourself if you were that person, or think about how you would treat a close friend if they came to you. Because in a lot of cases, that's how your close friends or close family will treat you when that comes up. And it's a lot easier to be mean to yourself and tell yourself that no one cares about your problems than it is to say, you know, if you're your best friend or your family member, no one cares about their problems. So I think, number one would be treat yourself like you're your own best friend.
That internal dialogue piece, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that self-compassion.
Yeah. I've even had some people who had a really negative voice like that, like inner voice. And I worked with a lady who told me that the way that she handles the negative voice a little bit better is she changed it to her grandma's voice. Because she said, my grandma would never say anything mean about me. She would never tell me that I was failing. She would tell me she was proud of me. And she can't even imagine her grandma telling her that she's a failure or she's not doing well enough in school or whatever. And I thought that was really awesome too. So if you have someone in your life who you think could never say a mean thing about you, maybe try imagining, what they would say to you in their voice and for your inner monologue.
That's a really great tip
that's
for
an
sure.
awesome
Right?
tip. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, thanks, Colby. These are great insights, very valuable. Let's maybe talk about some actionable steps listeners can take to kind of break down that stigma and create kind of a more open environment.
Absolutely. Initiating conversations about mental health, showing empathy, and educating ourselves and others about mental health can make all the difference. Colby, do you have any other strategies for us that would help us be an advocate for mental health?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, and like Hannah's doing right now, speak your truth. Be that person who can say, I'm having a bad day. I'm very stressed. I'm anxious today, and just say it out in the open, and just let other people know that you experience mental health too. Everyone does. Try to normalize it. Other things you can do is you can try. A lot of people volunteer. Big brothers, big sisters, that kind of stuff. And it's nice to do stuff like that because mental health's big there, right? Everyone, it's like when I work in mental health, everyone that works in mental health, talks about it, and it's a really positive experience. So anytime you can surround yourself with people who are like that is great as well, because it can help you build the confidence to have the ability to self-disclose like that. And I would say also keep yourself open for those conversations. The exact stigma that some people feel in starting those conversations, you can help to alleviate that by being there for those conversations. Even telling someone like, hey, if you need to talk about it, I've got a minute, or you know what I mean? Just, anything you can do to help normalize it and help people who are struggling, and leaving that space open for them to, to get in contact with you and to talk about it if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good. And Hannah, one more thing for you too. On that same note, being through all the struggles that you've had, now that you're, in a sense, advocating, as you mentioned, as an RA, you're telling students what they need or what supports are available. How then has your experience been in a sense being that same advocate, and what strategies have you maybe used as well?
Yeah, for sure. It's been fun, honestly. Like, I used to do Big Brothers Big Sisters in Medicine Hat, and I coached a girls basketball team, and so like for younger kids, and so I've been there. I've been that advocate for them as well. So, and it's very different advocating for younger people versus your own age or close to, and it's drastically different actually. But yeah, some of the strategies that I've used is like, how's it going? And they'll tell me, oh, school's good. How was your school? And I'll be like, actually not. And at this point, like, where I'm at, I hid my mental health for 8 years because it started in junior high, and I just hid it because, well, my mom didn't really believe in it, and I didn't get diagnosed by doctors until later, but I basically hid it for 8 years. So right now, I don't care. Like, at this point, I don't really care who knows and who doesn't, because it happens to literally everyone at some point. So just kind of being out there, being that, because I'm an extroverted person. I love going beyond the box. So like, just being out there, saying, hey, I'm dealing with this too. Can I help you? It's sometimes actually it's like the blind leading the blind.
Can be, yeah.
And it's definitely like that, but sometimes it can be a real help because maybe this person hasn't gotten the support that they needed. So yeah, some of the different strategies that I use are just like telling them like what supports I use and seeing what they can use, because not everything that works for me is going to work for you, but this is what works for me and this is what I tried. And it doesn't work for you, well, let's try something else that doesn't work for me. So if that makes any sense. Yeah. So yeah, just, getting to know the person too. One of my good friends right now, I got to know her last year. She was really struggling when I first met her, and I had no idea because she masked it so well. But at that time, I was masking really well too. I'm a master masker at that point. So yeah, and we both didn't know that we were going through everything all at once. We both didn't know we were using accessibility services. And then we saw each other at testing center. We're like, oh, hey, how's it going? So, yeah, just getting to know people really well as well, getting to be friends with them, because from an RA standpoint, lots of the people that we house here on campus, usually they are fresh out of high school. You know, they're 18, 19, sometimes even 17, coming, like they graduated in April of earlier this year, and now they're here. And, you know, like they might not know like how they can get supports on campus. They don't know a bunch of people. They could have moved from a different city, a different place. Right. That's something that as an RA that I love to do, is I love to get to know people. I now know people from Calgary, from Edmonton, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. I know someone from Ontario. Like, it's crazy. So just getting to know different people and different people's perspectives as well. And that's one thing that I really like to do as an advocate, is listen. Because for someone with mental health, I have ADHD. I love to talk. I love to talk about anything and everything. So I figure if this other person loves to talk, I'm going to listen. Like, even while Colby was talking, I was thinking, like, oh, I do that too, you know? And I wanted to say it, but I'm like, nah, I'm going to listen. So yeah, that's the biggest thing, is that I think for anyone who has some sort of struggle, is to listen. And sometimes I'll even say, oh, I heard you, but I didn't listen. Right. So, and I say that a lot, actually. But so yeah, that's probably the biggest things.
Great. Me. Yeah, building those connections, listening, putting yourself out there. Yeah.
As we get closer to the end of this episode, Colby, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, I just kind of like to give a kind of a refresher. Just remember to treat yourself like your best friend. Treat yourself like you're someone you love dearly. Try to be an advocate like Hannah. Try to normalize as much as you can in your society, in your culture, in your classroom, you know, wherever you can be someone who can, you know, listen and have those conversations and normalize mental health. Do the best you can. Yeah. And just, try to make everything a little better for other people if you can.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
To all our listeners out there, remember that help is always available. Don't hesitate to reach out to your college's counseling center or local mental health organizations. So I want to thank you, Colby and Hannah, for coming and being with us today. We really appreciate everything you've said. We'll take all of it to heart, and hopefully everybody will too.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So as we close this episode, we'd like to let our listeners know, if you're in Canada, many colleges offer resources like counseling services, workshops, online resources for mental health and well-being. There's also really great online resources. So if you're between the ages of 13 and 24, Kids Help Phone has excellent mental health resources. Mind Your Mind, I believe, .ca is another great mental health resource. That one is a collaboration between professionals and youth and young adults. So great tools on there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Seize the Awkward can be a really great resource. And Wellness Together Canada, all great online resources with great information, and then also potential texting or calling services if you do need to reach out and you're not sure who to talk to. Those can be some great confidential, anonymous resources as well.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And of course, if you're on campus here, there's always coming down to wellness services and talking to one of us. So remember, folks, there are no silly questions when it comes to mental health. We're here to provide information and support.
So we want to emphasize that breaking the stigma around mental health starts with all of us. Let's continue these conversations and build a more inclusive college experience for everyone.
Thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for more episodes of Fearless Journeys, Thriving in College, where we'll be tackling more topics that matter to you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review us. Your feedback means the world to us. And remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Keep thriving, and until next time, take care of yourselves.